joining us now, I'm kind of excited about it, is Noor Mulla. She is a second-year student at Georgetown Law University here in D.C. Had a chance to meet her a little bit back. And prior to moving here to America, Noor resided in Doha, Qatar, where I was able to go and visit what they call a university city out there, where there's 7 U.S. colleges right in the Middle East, right in Doha, and Georgetown being one of them. It's just fascinating, the level of U.S. education there and what has been put together. That's why I went there to see it for myself. I heard about it, but you got to go to see it like I did. And prior to that, she attended Qatar University College Law while attending QU. I love that. They should have a football team. QU. Noor spearheaded the street law program, spreading legal awareness among high school and university students. See, I've told you that the freedom in Qatar, right in the middle of the Gulf, is unbelievable. And nobody reports this because nobody went there except me. And I actually went there to figure about what was going on with the blockade, and then I got all this other information. And it's really helped me understand the region. Noor's research and academics have allowed her to present on education in Qatar at the 13th United Nations Congress on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice, as she presented before the Chief Justice of the United Kingdom, Lord Thomas, in 2015 on the Qatari legal system. I mean, think about that opportunity. She has also worked for the Max Planck Institute for Comparative and International Private Law as a family law researcher in Germany. So lots of cool stuff. And Noor is with us now. Thank you for being with us, Noor. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, John.
I mean, you've done so much. It's kind of unbelievable, and I've been following what you've done. And tell me a little bit about your experience as a Qatari law student in the U.S. and Washington, D.C., and kind of what some of the differences are since you decided to come to the U.S. and study at Georgetown.
Well, I honestly enjoyed my time in the U.S. because it provides me with a great opportunity to live and study independently. Living in the U.S. has exposed me to people from all around the world with similar interests in law and international affairs. I have academic and professional opportunities here that are building up my personality, experiences, and skill set. And overall, it has been a great experience. And the reason that I decided to come to study law in the United States is that upon my graduation, I want to pass the New York bar and prepare myself for a judicial career back in Qatar, because I believe that after hosting the World Cup, the courts in Qatar will be full of international cases, and passing the bar will help me to widen my horizon about the international cases.
Well, that's really smart. I got to tell you, that is really, you talk about a plan. I mean, when I was your age, I never had that kind of a plan. I mean, that is a plan. That is very impressive. Right? That's right. There are going to be a lot of international cases when the Cup comes in. That's what 2022, and it'll be in Doha. And what is just tell me, what are some of the similarities and differences, Noor, between living in Qatar and the U.S.? Because there's a lot more freedom in Qatar than people have any idea. You have to really go there to see it, like I did with your own eyes, and see the freedom and the liberty and Noor, the incredible empowerment of women. And that's why I wanted to get you on today, because I've been telling people this and they just don't believe it. So tell me the differences, but then tell me that the empowerment of women in Qatar and the liberation of women was breathtaking to me when I was there. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, some of the similarities and differences, between the life here in the U.S. and Qatar, I would start with the differences. I would say, in Qatar, so Qatar is a very family-oriented and collective society, and we live in a close family circle. However, in the US, different. It has allowed me to be on my own, learn more about myself as an individual, and take experiences and lessons that my father had always taught me while living in Austria and practicing them every day, including paying bills by my own. As far as similarities goes, like Education City and Qatar University in Qatar provide us a culture of openness and acceptance that I have been lucky enough to enjoy in the U.S. So I didn't feel like there is much of differences between living here and and Qatar. So in addition, like in Qatar, we have credible and renowned academic programs, faculty, and curricula. This is in terms of the life differences. But in terms of women, you asked me about the women's. Let me first provide you with some historical background to let you understand. Yeah, to let you understand like the women position now in Qatar.
Yes.
So I would start like since 1996, our leader, His Highness Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa, the father of the current Emir, His Highness Sheikh Tamim, had a vision for Qatar. He revolutionized the country and benefited the region and made Qatar a state-of-art cosmopolitan hub in the Gulf region. He worked with the First Lady of Qatar, Her Highness Sheikh Hamoza, to promote gender balance in Qatar at all levels. They promoted modern education, built modern health facilities, promoted sport as a mean and the agent for change in Qatar. So the basic infrastructure for a wealthy state like Qatar started only during Sheikh Hamad's era with his 2030 Qatar's vision, and it's continuing today by His Highness Sheikh Tamim. And I honestly believe that hosting the World Cup was a pretext for building modern Qatar for future generation. And for your question, of course, Her Highness Sheikh Hamoza is to be credited for bringing the status of women in Qatar to be on same sort of similarity and par with the U.S. women. So I would say women in Qatar share similar lifestyles with American women. Qatari women have been driving for a long time and participate in politics for years, participate in the workforce and executive leadership in the country. Qatari women became judges, ambassadors, and even received higher education than men. So, and Qatar Vision 2030 is like the milestone, and will put Qatar among the developed state, in the state of developing state. And like these dynamic changes made Qatar and its people in a position of envy, not only in the region but all around the world.
Well, that's what I thought was fascinating, and I saw that when I was there. Just the number of women running things that I ran into, because I just walked around. That's how I get my knowledge, is I just talk to people, as you know. And when I was there, I happened to be there during the International Food Festival. So, and so that was like, and I didn't even know about it. It was like happenstance, right? Sometimes sometimes there's a saying in the U.S., better than to be lucky than anything else, and I just happened to be there. So I got to talk to all of these people, and when you talk about families, that's the other thing I noticed was a number. It was so family oriented. So my question is, as close as families are, and you were, and now you go to the U.S. I mean, how did your father react to that? And your mom, and like all of a sudden their daughter is in the U.S. Far away, and you're close. How did they kind of deal with that?
So, well, I grew up in Austria and Vienna. My dad was a senior official at the United Nations in Vienna. So, like, I would say I'm used to study abroad. It's not the first time for me, and they were so open-minded that they're so happy with it. They want me to learn more, and they actually encourage me to do it. I wouldn't do it without their support.
Well, it's always good to have the backing from mom and dad at home. We're with Noor Mulla. She's a second-year student at Georgetown Law Center, and she studied law at the University of Qatar. She's part of the contingent at University City in Doha, which has 7 U.S. colleges there. Another best-kept secret in the world that nobody really knows anything about. Let me get to let me get to the blockade, which is I went there to figure it out and got a lot of information. And when I met with the Minister of Humanities, he told me that it was a humanitarian catastrophe for not only those in Qatar, but all people of the Gulf states, because they couldn't move freely between Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, etc.
Oh, yeah.
And there's how has that affected things?
So, so once the blockade was announced, honestly, it introduced a state of fear and uncertainty among the population at first, and it was believed among people to be a step toward military escalation and invasion. This is because we have experienced in 1996 their attempt to create an internal coup, invade and take over the country. But a few months later, the Qatari people saw the power of the government and its openness and need for its people, as it was with us every step of the way, providing us with resources that were once important. So we, the Qatari people, felt very safe afterward. But in terms of the impact, many of my friends, they were students at Saudi and UAE universities, and after the blockade was announced, Qatari students were not allowed to complete their exams at the end of the academic year, and they refused to give them their certificate of graduation without giving them any reason. And in terms of families, actually, in Qatar, there are 6,474 marriage family that has been really affected by the blockade. They weren't allowed to go to visit their families, and even the mother couldn't. The Emirati woman, the Qatari woman that is married to an Emirati husband, couldn't go to her husband in UAE. So it was disaster.
Right. I mean, it's that the humanitarian situation there has been horrible because the relationship between the Gulf states before the blockade embargo done on Qatar by Bahrain, UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt, the Gang of Four, if you will. I mean, it was free flowing. You could basically go from one country to the other. You could go from Qatar to UAE, Saudi Arabia, and back, no problem. Under the GCC family rules, and now you can't do that. So people can't see their family, and you had the whole education thing going on. Let me just ask you this. I've got a couple more minutes, Noor.
Sure.
Human rights in Qatar and relevant law studies. So I know this is one of your fields of expertise. Explain that to me. What do you work on for that?
So actually it's not I'm not an expert in this field, but as in terms of human rights situation in Qatar, Qatar has implemented and honored Qatar has implemented and honored its obligation under the international treaties, including Human Rights Covenant and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And furthering their support for human rights, the Qatar National Human Rights Committee, which is an independent body in Qatar, promotes human rights and human dignity and social justice. And recently, they have been also compensating the blockade victims and ensure that they are in compliance with the international legal norms and terms.
So let's just end here, if I may, Noor. And I really appreciate the time because it helps me and our audience learn about different parts of the world. And rather than get on the politicians, we like to get on people that actually live there and are willing to talk to us. What is your message to Americans about the Qatari, about the U.S. relationship with Qatar? What would be your overall message?
So I would say for the American audience, I would urge America, which we believe is a peace-loving nation and the guardian of the UN Charter, to take up the Qatari blockade to the UN Security Council, as the continuation of it will endanger the peace and security of the world, and the Gulf region is the main source of energy for the whole world, and this area must be kept in peace and safety. And we, the Qatari people, need to promote better understanding between our two nations through continuous dialogue at all levels, including student programs, culture, tourism programs, and expansion of trade.
Final question, because just let's reverse it the other way. If you were talking to your a Qatari audience right now, what would you tell them about America?
I would say we need to better understand the relationship between Qatar and America, because I feel like in Qatar most of the people, they are unaware of the strong relationship and how we should understand it through dialogue and the student programs. That's what I would say.
Excellent. Noor Al-Mulla, I really appreciate your time today, second-year student at Georgetown Law Center. If there's anything that is fun for me to do, it is talk to students that are coming internationally and share their perspectives. And what you've done just as your second year at Georgetown Law is unbelievable, really, the things that you're involved in. And it's really a tribute to yourself and your family. And I love your plan about passing the bar in New York and then going back to Doha, figuring that when the World Cup comes, you're going to get plenty of opportunity. Plenty of opportunity. That is really smart. Hey, thank you for joining us. Thank you
very much, John. Thank you. It's my pleasure.
I love getting students on my show. It is so much fun. Thank you, Noor Al-Mulla. John Fredericks Radio Network.